Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Jim and this is Exploretti. If it's your first time here, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps the channel. And this is a follow-up from my last video where I was discussing selling the Pan America Special and getting a lightweight adventure bike. And surprise, I now have a lightweight adventure bike. But what happened to the Pan America? Nothing at all. Just couldn't get rid of it. The Pan America is a phenomenal machine, and it really does 75 or 80% of what I've asked it to do. As I have been attempting to advance my off-road skills, I've definitely put myself in a couple of sketchy situations with the Pan America. And as a solo rider 90% of the time, the thought of continually dropping and picking up that bike isn't super exciting for me. I've had my fair share of low speed drops, and to the Pan America's credit, the bike's very durable. I think I've got a little dent in the muffler from a water crossing gone bad, but other than that, the bike's been fantastic. So why the Aprilia Tuareg 660? Well, let's go through some of the different bikes that I was looking at, and then I'll specifically mention the pros and cons that I felt either added to or took away from my decision. I had developed a short list of adventure motorcycles I wanted to look at, and that list included both middleweight and lightweight adventure bikes. For the lightweight adventure bikes, I was looking at the KTM 390 Adventure along with BMW's 310 GS. The middleweight list was a little bit more lengthy. I had the Yamaha Tenere 700, the Aprilia Tuareg 660. I had included Ducati's new DesertX in the list as well, and the Honda CB500X. Those are my key middleweight motorcycles. However, after reading a lot of the comments from my last video, I did include the KTM 790, 890 platform. I did want to review those and added that to my short list. So just briefly, what were some of my key decision points? In my evaluation spreadsheet, I included data points like the weight of the bike, its fuel capacity, suspension travel, ground clearance. I had a pretty extensive spreadsheet. So what were some of those criteria that I used to add or ultimately remove different motorcycles from the list? Let's cover the lightweight adventure bikes real quick. A couple of considerations in removing the lightweight adventure bikes. First, performance. The KTM pushes around 42 horsepower at the flywheel, the BMW a little bit less. At upper elevations, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet, you're giving up at least a quarter of your horsepower just because there's less combustible air. When you start to get up into the trails around 8 or 9 or 10,000 feet, I just didn't want to have that working against me. And that, coupled with more capable suspension components in the mid-range, meant that I had removed both the KTM 390 and the BMW 310 GS from my consideration. All right, so let's talk about the KTM 790, 890 platform and some of the pros and cons that I specifically saw. A couple things I did like about the KTM. I did like that KTM subdivided that particular model into 3 sub-variants. You've got the 7 or 890 Adventure, the Adventure R, and then the Rally. It did give you the ability to sort of customize your experience within that one platform. I did like the design of the saddlebag fuel tanks and carrying that weight a little bit lower on the bike. And I also like the fuel capacity. What didn't I love about the 790 or 890? The cost. In looking at even 790s that were pre-owned around my area, they're pretty expensive. And then the brand new 890s, the cost just continues to go up and up. So cost was a factor. The aesthetics of the KTM aren't something that I just fell in love with. The KTM just didn't really gel with me. And in each review I watched or read, KTM's reliability was touched on pretty significantly. So that also gave me a little bit of concern where there has been a lot of documented issues with that platform. So I ended up removing the 790, 890 from my list. How about the Tenere 700 then? That bike on paper looks phenomenal. A couple of the things that I did like about the Tenere. Yamaha's reliability. I think they have a well-earned reputation for putting out a quality product, and its capabilities. There were a couple of cons though to remove it from the list. One was the availability. It's still really difficult to get your hands on a Tenere 700, at least around where I'm at. In addition to that, the higher motor placement and then higher fuel tank placement certainly means that the bike has a more difficult lift than something like the Tuareg. Several comments and reviews touch on that. They all kind of felt that the bike was more difficult to lift than they expected. Based upon that information, I ended up removing the Tenere 700 from my list. Ducati's DesertX looks phenomenal. My biggest issue with that is the weight. It's just under 500 pounds. It makes a bit more power too. It's right around or just over 100 horsepower. So those are phenomenal numbers, but I didn't feel like the weight differentiated it itself enough from my existing Pan America Special. It would be a heavier, albeit more capable off-road bike. I'm willing to sacrifice some of that performance for a lighter weight machine. How about the Honda CV500X? I had added that to the list, but one of the things I found that from an off-road capability, it was gonna be a little bit more in line with the KTM or the BMW 310 GS. It weighed a little bit more, but does not have power on par with what you would expect with the 500. However, you're no doubt getting a very reliable Honda product. And that, coupled with the aesthetic, wasn't something that I was really thrilled about. So it got removed pretty quick, honestly. So what about the Tuareg 660? Well, it really represents the best compromise for me right now in an additional adventure bike. It's 440 pounds wet, so it's quite a bit less than the 570 pounds of the Pan America. It has 9.5 inches of travel front and rear with a 21-inch front and an 18-inch rear. The suspension's fully adjustable. It's got a little bit more of an off-road bias than the Pan America does. It uses the same 660 power plant that the RS 660 or the Tuono 660 use. 80 horsepower, so quite a bit less than the horsepower that I've been accustomed to with the Pan America Special, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for more of a lightweight, off-road friendly platform. A couple of question marks: the Aprilia reliability. Clearly it's not on par with the Yamaha. There isn't a perfect motorcycle out there, but I feel like the Tuareg 660 for me right now is going to be the best compromise that will enable me to get more off-road experience safely. And that's why I ended up compromising on the Tuareg 660 versus any of the other bikes that I had listed. If you haven't already, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps the channel out. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with me today, and until next time, ride safe.